Welcome to the Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee for May 15th, 2025. We're going to do a roll call of the attendees. We'll start with the end of the table there.
ADJOURN, financial analyst.
Scott Schlag, finance director.
And Stein, city administrator, urban renewal.
Lee Wigan, URA budget committee member.
And Stearns, URA agency commissioner and city council.
Ken Davis, Urban Renewal Agency Commissioner.
Sorry. You mean to cut you off, sorry. I'm just excited to be here. Brian Hodgson, mayor and Urban Renewal Agency vice chair.
Kim Wigan, budget member, and URA budget committee chair. Tracy Hensley, city council president, urban renewal agency chair.
Paul Waterman, City Councilor, Urban Renewal Agency Commissioner.
Jack Hamilton, URA budget committee.
David Tate, URA Budget Committee.
Sean Burrow, URA Budget Committee member.
All right, next on the agenda is, do we want to, I think we should probably acknowledge everyone in the room.
Oh, Kathy Mulligan, this member, a member of our community.
Jessica Roberts, first supervisor.
Captain Gonzalez, County Police.
Eric?
Eric Leitonen, Canby Swim Center.
Do we need to push this? George Stroh, Chief of Police.
Don Hardy, Planning Director.
Monica Stone, Public Works.
Marissa Ely, Library Director.
Jamie Stickle, Economic Development Director.
Todd Wood, Canby Area Transit.
Ryan Potter, planning manager.
Spencer Pollock, Canby Public Works.
Tyler Nizer, economic development tourism partner.
Maya Benham, administrative director and city recorder.
Teresa Richley, deputy city recorder.
All right, now, next on our agenda is public comment. Oh, I guess we should recognize Councilor Herman Maldonado. Are you there? Maybe not? Okay.
Yes, I'm getting on right now.
Okay. There we have Councilor Maldonado.
I've had my hand up for the longest. Good evening, everyone.
All right, now next on our agenda is public comment. Do we have anyone in the audience or on Zoom who wishes to address the Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee? No, nobody public comment?
Nobody on.
Okay. So moving to old business, we need to approve the minutes from the May 30th, 2024 Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee meeting. Do we have a motion? Madam Chair, I move to approve the minutes from the May 30th, 2024 Urban Renewal Budget meeting.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to approve the minutes from Council President Hensley and a second from Sean Barwick.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed?
Aye.
All right, motion approved to approve the minutes from the May 30th, 2024 Urban Renewal Budget meeting. On to new business, is electing the URA Budget Committee Chair. Madam Chair, I move to reappoint you as Budget Committee Chair.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to nominate Kim Wiggins and seconded by Jim Davis. I'm so sorry. I'm trying not to go cold. And, all right, any other nominations? Questions, discussion? All in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? All right. Moving on. We need to elect a URA Budget Committee Vice Chair. We have a motion to nominate a Vice Chair.
May I ask who is currently the vice chair?
I'm not sure.
Counselor Patton is.
Oh, Councilor Patton is.
I'm here to accept a nomination, I'll nominate Jim Davis as vice chair, if he'll take it.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion to nominate Jim Davis as the URA Budget Committee Vice Chair from Council President Henley and seconded by Budget Member Lee Wiggin and as the Urban Renewal Budget Committee Vice Chair. Are there any other nominations?
Well, I would, nothing against Commissioner Davis, but we have, under the council, Commissioner Patton is not here, but I would still put him out there as a second nominee, just because he has been, he was last year, he might be here, because penalizes him remaining the vice chair.
I wouldn't say it penalizes him, but it's hard for him to accept a nomination when he's not on yet. Is he on yet, Teresa? So he can accept the nomination?
No, ma'am.
Do we know he wants to be?
I do not.
Later. I see, we have to, that's the next item of business. Any other thoughts or discussion?
I guess the motion is given.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and we have elected Jim Wiggin to be the URA Budget Committee. Oh, no, I'm sorry, Jim Davis, sorry. Vice Chair. Vice Chair. Moving on. So we have elected Councilor Jim Davis to be the Vice Chair of the Urban Renewal Budget Committee. And, all right, next order of business is the budget message from Iron Side. Great.
So, Urban Renewal Committee members, just to remind you, go ahead and Teresa, if you will, things. So the basics of urban renewal, you've probably seen this slide before. Canby's urban renewal district was created in 1999.
Excuse me, could you speak up, please?
Yeah, certainly. And URA is a separate entity from the city, as you know. Council acts as the URA governing board, and this is the budget committee of the urban renewal agency. When the agency is created, the tax base is frozen, and all proceeds above the tax base go to the Urban Renewal Agency. And so we've had a very, very successful urban renewal agency over the years, and now the council is talking about closing the Urban Renewal Agency. So this year will be the final payment. This next year, fiscal year 25-26 will be the final year that the Urban Renewal Agency has, a debt payment will be made. And then once this year goes by, we will begin closing down the agency, and you'll see less and less expenses budgeted here. So we might have a little bit of interest earnings in fiscal year 26-27, but that's all. So. And since the Urban Renewal District has been created, we have created $311 million in additional revenue for the Canby community. So it's been a very successful district. So just what drives the Urban Renewal Agency budget is property tax collections, that amount that we've received from the county or from the other jurisdictions that all go to the agency. Debt service also drives the budget, because ultimately tax increment is all our urban renewal is all debt based. And then capital projects also drive the budget. Is there anything you want to say?
I think you have a question.
So this year, we are going to again budget $435,000 in materials, capital, well, in materials and services. 425,000 is in personal services, and another 10,000 is in materials and supplies, or materials and services. And then we will budget 1.892 in capital project, which is primarily
The First Street realignment, so the curbs, sidewalks, paving, and that would wrap on Northwest Second, depending on the scope of the project and how that matches up with the funding that we have available, which we were fine tuning before the budget was put out.
So in terms of cash flow projections for fiscal years 25-26, we will receive $5 million in urban renewal. We have, or in tax increment, we have a beginning fund balance of 1.9. Prior year property taxes and interest earnings all told get us to $6.3 million, and that is not inclusive of stock, whatever did that not include, transfers in the agency. So the operations, as I said, 425, which is due to the city, 10,000 for materials and services, 25,000 for beautification, 40,000 for facade grants. If the council doesn't, or if the urban renewal agency wants to begin to exclude those expenditures, they will just roll into the capital projects. So, and the $4 million in debt. So that's a rundown of the urban renewal agency. My recommendation is, because we are receiving one more increment of tax increment, that we continue to budget our full expenditures, and then but this would be the last year of those expenditures, and then they would all go back into the general fund. So kind of ties in with the strategy that I'll lay out when we get to the city budget as well.
So many questions. I believe it was 2 years ago, we wanted to start moving the economic development payments to the general fund. We're still not even seeing a partial payment out of the general fund, doing it all up for renewal. I'd like to understand why that is, because it doesn't seem like we're preparing our general fund. We're just going to slam it all at once in 1 year. I don't like that. Second, the facade improvement program, if this body decides to leave it in the budget, I would highly recommend we do it at 25 or 50, because the way the program works, we allow up to $25,000 per application. At $40,000 budget, we'll end up in the same situation we were last year when we had an application we couldn't fully fund. So I do not want it at 40. It's either got to be, if we're going to have a program that's in increments of 25, we need a budget in increments of 25. That's all I have at the moment. So if you want to address those two things, that'd be great.
Well, we have talked about that, given that we are still receiving tax increment revenue. I did make that decision that it didn't make sense to begin to transfer the expenditures when we still have the revenue coming in from tax increment. So I made that decision, and we did last year and we did this year as well. So, and the 40,000, if you want to change that to 50,000, we can do that.
We can discuss that when we get to the line item with the rest of the body, but I just wanted to point out to everyone that the program does operate in $25,000 increments, so it doesn't make any sense to have a $40,000 budget.
What's the beautification and marketing portion?
That line item, that has been used to replace, like the banners downtown, and then they'll be replacing the banners on Highway 99. So beautification outside of, like, outside of Parks and Rec efforts, but still tangible things. In the past, years ago, in 2015 or so, that money was also used for, artwork downtown. The mural on the outside of the Civic Center building is one of those pieces. So beautification, not always art, but more tangible things.
So if the plan is for when it's shut down to move that into the general fund, I mean, is there going to be a program that's going to stop at the end of this year?
I think that's a policy decision that, that the urban or the city council can make if it wants to pick up beautification. But yes, if it's not
So
available.
this funding source is going to go away, getting replaced by some money from
It would have to be replaced by someone.
getting some money from the urban renewal budget's ashes, I guess we call it.
Yes, thank you for that point. I mean, we will be the recipient of the city of Canby will be the recipient of additional money as well as the other taxing entities. And so we will have that extra $1 million that will be the city's.
Thank you. As far as the 425,000, I personally felt council gave direction to start transferring that money over to the operator. Okay, so direction from council wasn't followed there. And so this is going to basically create a substantial amount out of that $1 million that we'll receive into the city at $425,000. When you add in the beautification and for facade improvement program, and that's even that much more money in preparation for the transfer of those funds from urban renewal into the operating. So I'm still would like to see some of that $425,000 put back into the operating budget. And then I'm not in favor of the beautification and marketing or the facade improvement. The reason I'm not in favor of facade improvement, I've asked time and time again for a definition of white. What is white? In regards to facade improvement. To me, we don't fit the definition of that money that we're spending for some of these improvements downtown. So, and if this money is not expended, instead of going back into capital, any balance we go back to the junior taxing districts. And I'd like to see that if we cut those things, that the money goes back to the junior taxing districts.
Just to piggyback on what he was saying, I personally, it's not a huge amount of the total budget amount, but I personally don't like the facade improvement program itself because it's basically a allocation of city citizens' money for specific business investments that benefit certain people and not everybody. Not that I want it, but I have a business too, and I wouldn't qualify for it. Any business would love to have money, but we have to be picking and choosing when we come to a facade. Are there kind of specific grants to specific individuals for specific reasons? And so I would be in favor of cutting that out of the budget as well for that reason. Obviously, the grants that we did approve last year, I voted for them because it's budgeted. We give our I think we give our permission now or withdraw from our permission now. But as a matter of principle, I dislike where one particular business can take advantage of other businesses' investments by knowing who call or having the right particular type of investments. I don't know how they benefit the citizens as a whole, because one landowner needs to have subsidize that. So, yeah.
Thank you. So before I make my comments regarding these two topics, Jamie, can you speak to what has been some of the marketing dollars been used for? Obviously, we talked about the banners and some of those things, but what have been some of the other marketing pieces that we've done and that we have planned to do for this next fiscal year?
I would say that the use of the word marketing in that sense is marketing, like, for instance, the banners is a great example of, visit Canby, stay in Canby, all of those things. It's not traditional marketing like an advertisement in a magazine, because urban renewal is about more tangible items that are going to stick with the district for a longer period of time. So in the sense of understanding that this year is the last year of urban renewal, we've had some preliminary conversations of ways that that money could be used. But I think in the last several years, we've used it in very thoughtful ways that help to beautify not only downtown, but the banners on Highway 99 will be going up relatively soon. So being able to paint a picture of someone who comes into downtown or not into downtown, into Canby and into the downtown, of somebody cares, this is a place that has put effort into that, and that in and of itself is a marketing effort because it beautifies and it helps to promote. So
could we be using those funds as well for, targeted events within the urban renewal district?
No, I don't believe that that's what that money could be used for.
So that like you said, the tangible takeaway, physical touch, feel,
Yes.
like I said. So regarding the two items, I think to those points and what we're talking about from the marketing standpoint, I do think that those are pertinent to draw to downtown and draw through the city of Canby. So to me, I think having those dollars there for the beautification marketing makes sense. The facade improvement program, it has been a win. I think I look at the buildings and things that we have put paint on and helped redo. And there's been a number of recipients of that. And I think that's been a good thing for our downtown core that have used it. So I don't, whether we adjust the amounts to 50 or whatever, or leave it at the 40, I think it's a program that's worth having to do. Do we have many buildings left necessarily that would need a facade improvement? I don't know. But like we just had a couple of buildings, in our downtown core that could benefit, if that opened up and could benefit from some of that assistance.
And I was just going to say, just to build off of what I said with the tangible things. So that facade improvement program is for properties, and so that those improvements stay with the district over time, just to make sure, because businesses might change somewhat quickly or for a long time, but it's with the building.
Thanks.
Are there any applicants?
We had two that were approved this past year. So one for Lyness, which is where SP&D Graphics was, and then the other was just approved for 4-8 Financial. And theirs was a smaller request and to do some work on the backside of their building, which sometimes backsides of buildings do not qualify because a facade is what you can see from the street. But 4-8 Financial and several other businesses are unique in the sense that you can actually see them. They're both sides of their building from either First Avenue or Second Avenue.
Even like for that 4-H area, or 4-H, that, it looks like kind of like a parking lot right now, but technically that's kind of designated as a plaza, right? It's like almost like a kind of park, like it's supposed to be designated for being used for the community. So it's not just a parking lot that's, being seen by people from the street, but it's also designated for events and for community usage as well.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Just a question, and maybe it doesn't mean anything, but, at least from my discussions with some of the landowners, is that a city-owned parking lot? Or is that privately owned parking lot? Because I was under the impression from talking to some people that that's a privately owned parking lot. I could be wrong. I could be misinformed. I'm just wondering, as a clarification, if that parking lot is city parking lot or that's privately owned parking lot.
I don't have that answer. I think that has been debated in the time that I have been in Canby, because I think at one point it was owned by the city. But then there was using, I think Councilor Commissioner Hensley said the Arts Association used to utilize that as a gathering spot. And so it is unclear to me.
Because I know some businesses marked it as for
It's their personal parking.
owned by that. I know, like, for example, a parking lot behind my building is city owned because but it seems to be that some of the parking there has been designated as for the particular business only. I'm wondering if that's because they own it or they bought some sort of lease on it, or if it's if it is public. I don't know if that's going to change anybody's mind about it, but it was what you were saying was kind of a different understanding of what I had, so I was correct.
Yeah, it has been used for events, as an event space, but I'll admit, as long as I've been on council, it's been unclear if it's Holly Mall that owns it, or if it's a co-owned by multiple owners, or if it's the city. Nobody's
There was
been
an
clear.
I feel like that maybe at one point there was like a memorandum of understanding that it could be used, but it has not been.
I mean, we already approved that grant, and I'm not going to try to oppose it flatly. I don't know.
Yeah.
Seems to me that you get a title report on that property.
Yeah, it should be fairly easy to get.
So you can have that for us the next meeting.
Okay. But I think the point that Ms. Stibble was making though is that it's viewable from both
No, I
First and Second
understand.
Avenue.
But like I said, I'm not
qualifies.
proposing that we undo the act done. I was just a piece of information that was different than my understanding of what it was, and I'm not sure of what it was.
I would really like to see some movement one way or the other on the facade improvement. If we're gonna keep it, it can't be at 40,000. It doesn't make sense. The program operates in $25,000 increments. And I don't wanna end up in the embarrassing situation we were in with Lynette last time, where we had to only approve part of her plan, and then she had to come back for the rest when the other plan didn't come through. It's like, it's much cleaner if it's in $25,000 increments in the budget.
So is that something that is, that you that decide you can go on, or that, okay, so that's what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm basically making a motion, I don't even care if it's 25 or 50, I just want it in a clean $25,000 increment.
So I will make a motion to move that amount from the 40,000 to the 50,000 line.
Second.
It is been motion by Mayor Hudson to increase the facade improvement program to 50,000 and seconded by Councilor Maldonado. Vote, discussion?
I'd like to speak against the motion at this point. If we're gonna approve it, I'd like to see it at 25,000 or zero.
Because I've already made my point earlier here that I think it's a public money for a private party, that it's just that's the principle matter. I want to see as little of that as possible in government.
What's in the citizen? 25, 50, 0?
Well, the motion's to 50.
That's true. But we're under discussion right now. Discuss it.
I don't think, so and here's the reason why I'm seconding it. I believe the beautification project doesn't just benefit a business owner or that building owner. I believe that it benefits Canby as a whole. It does keep us looking good in, through passerbys, through tourists, anybody that's coming through town, anything. The 50,000, I believe, would do a heck of a lot better than a 25,000. And I do agree, it does need to be incremental.
It just, I don't know what changed people's mind, but just from an accounting point of view, a capital, that does increase the basis of the property. Anything that's a paint job is considered maintenance, not, by the IRS rules, that I'm familiar with, not a betterment of the property. And from a strict accounting point of view, if I own the property, I don't blame you for getting the facade. But if I owned it, I might ask for it myself because it's out there to get it. You're going to sell a lot quicker if you get that facade improvement first, and you're going to have a good, nice, healthy benefit from that. So that's all, I guess. So that's much to me.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not here to debate 25 or 50 or 0. I'll honestly really care. I'll vote for the motion either way, but you guys decide what number you want. But I just wanted to point out that if we're going to take 10 more, put it into that, we have to take it from somewhere else. So that'll be the next motion. So think about where you want to take that 10K out of.
Is one of the goals of the Urban Renewal Agency to keep the downtown area from going to blight?
Yes.
Because as you see, we have a highway and that's where most of the traffic goes, and downtown core areas have a tendency to deteriorate. And so the purpose of this is to keep it up. And if that's the goal and that's the purpose, you're going to use those funds for that purpose. And yes, it's giving it to a building that a person owns, but isn't that the whole goal of the Urban Renewal Agency?
Yes.
It's not? Just thinking, yeah, pretty well.
Yes.
I'd like to point out too that this isn't just money that's just given like away freely. I mean, it's freely, but also the property owners are required to match half of that. So they are investing as well in the property as well, along with the city. So it is a joint effort. It is not just here's a gift. Yeah.
Right. And they're required to submit, just for members who might not also be on city council or not familiar with the program, they are required to submit bids. So it's not just a blank check of 25,000, and it is a reimbursable grant. So we receive a paid invoice for work that was part of the facade improvement program, and then we would submit through our finance department to get a check cut to them for that half. So yes, you're correct. And some of those go all the way up to 25,000. Some of them are smaller, but having, like Commissioner Hensley had said, incrementals to make sure that we have enough to be able to apply to either one or two projects would probably be beneficial. And then also I would just like to note that we are telling anybody who is utilizing the facade improvement program that work does need to be done within the lifespan of the urban renewal district. So it used to be that you have 2 years to be able to complete work. A project that would come forward, let's say in the first meeting in July, would need to then be completed by the end of the urban renewal district, so the end of the fiscal year. And we're making sure to communicate that as well. And then any money that wasn't spent would then go back to those special tax initiatives.
I mean, it's also important to note that each project has to be approved. So just because they're included in the budget doesn't mean the project would be.
Councilor Maldonado, you have a yellow hand up.
Jamie, could you please remind me, I know there were some certain stipulations on whether or not a business owner could receive this grant as well, correct?
Sorry. Can you repeat that, please?
Yes, sorry. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah.
Okay. Jamie, could you please remind me, I know that there were certain stipulations for a business, in order for a business owner to receive the grants as well, correct?
Yeah, so if it was a business owner, I don't know if I'm gonna be answering the question, so you might have to have a follow-up question. But if a business
That one
owner
loaded.
was interested in, applying for this program, they have to have the approval of the property owner, because again, that sticks with the life of the building. And then they would have to be located within the urban renewal district. I'm not sure what other stipulations.
I guess what I'm wondering is, and I apologize, I misspoke, I meant property owner. Does the building or the facade have to be in a certain percentage of disarray for it to receive this grant? Or is just anybody able to receive this grant?
No, provided they are within the urban renewal district, they can apply for the grant.
Okay, I would like to see that actually changed. Personally, I don't want somebody being able to add a mural or anything onto their wall if there's nothing wrong with it. There's no blight of any sort, which I know we're still a little uncertain on that definition as well.
Yes.
I can speak to that. Commissioner Maldonado, that would actually not be something this body that takes care of. That's a policy change in the program. So if you want to add that to an urban renewal agenda at a future date, we can talk about changes to the program. Right now, all we can talk about is the numbers.
And also, the urban renewal agency would be able to vote no for a project if they did not think that.
True. We can also deny a project if we don't think it's necessary.
Okay,
So
all right, but thank you for the
we can talk about
clarification.
that later, but tonight's mission is approving numbers for the budget.
I still stand by my second on that then for the 50,000, because again, it still has to be approved anyways. So it's not a guaranteed for 25,000 for an owner.
Correct.
I will make one last discussion point, and I know my day has been long, and I'm a bit running, but, so clarification piece, to build on Commissioner Waterman's comment. So the building owner is making the investment, we are making an investment as well, increasing the assessed value of said property, which then also increases the tax revenue for the city of Canby in the urban renewal district, correct?
And in the future for the special taxing districts when urban renewal is finished.
I guess I'm not that wrong, thank you.
The urban renewal agency dies in a year and a half, right?
June 30th.
June 30th.
Year and one.
We make the last payment on June 1st, 2026, is what it's told.
So we basically don't have to
Count the days.
change the policy. It's kind of done.
Yeah, we can do it as a piece-by-piece process, yeah.
Okay, are we back to the motion? Is there any more discussion? Are we ready for a vote? Yeah, we're ready for a vote. So the vote is moving the dollar amount from 40,000 to 50,000 in the facade improvement program. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
We have
Three noes.
noes and
Yes.
it passed.
1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 10, there's 3 no's, so it's passed.
Okay. So we have passed. We have passed and moved, and it is now $50,000 in the facade improvement program.
So my question, go ahead. Yes, Section Hans.
I will defer to you because I think you're about to ask the same question I was.
Yes.
Perhaps, are we cutting from materials and services or beautification? Because we need to take that 10,000 from somewhere. Or we could take 5 from each. I guess I will ask Eileen.
Yes.
Renewal Agency Director.
Yes.
What is your recommendation for the 10K to come out of? I'm guessing we can't really take out of the transfers out because that is salaries, as I understand it.
So maybe a clarifying question, if I
I was
may.
gonna say, I was gonna
Yeah, I
say that
would
before.
say, so we could take it out of urban renewal projects.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say, I would take it out of that.
Out of projects?
Yeah.
What projects do we already have budgeted for that we'd be taking that from? I mean, I
Well-
think I'd rather take it from beautification, sorry, Jamie, but I mean, that's something that we're gonna have to figure out in the general fund later, because obviously promotion and stuff is gonna happen. But what projects are we wanting to get done? That's the whole point of the agency is to get projects done, so like, what projects would we be taking the money from?
Well, we don't have a cost estimate yet on the urban renewal agency, the downtown area. So taking $10,000 off that project estimate, I don't think it would be. But again, just my recommendation, you can do whatever you want.
And if you took 10,000 from beautification, what does that do? I know, Jamie, I know you and Tyler really probably market and manage that budget line most, so what would the effect of that be?
I would support whatever Eileen put forward. I think that it would probably have less of an impact coming from the beautification line item rather than the urban renewal project line item, which is for North First Street and Second Avenue. That being a bigger scope of a project, a bigger impact of a project, and not only addresses kind of continuing the work that has been done along First Avenue back in 2012, but also some of the safety concerns. I know that there's been wear and tear on those sidewalks, so
I would propose then to the committee, let's split the difference and take 5 from beautification and 5 from projects.
Agreed.
I guess I
Do we
see,
need a motion?
well, we do, but I see that Vice Chair Watson has his card up.
Oh, yes, Mayor Council President.
Thank you.
Can I phone a friend? So, Monica and Spencer, from the project list, the 1.8 million, which has been conversation for that project, my understanding is that that's project's already looking to be well under that 1.8 million?
If I remember right from the last conversation at the Urban Renewal Agency, I think Commissioner Stearns had said that he wanted to try to leave a little bit of a buffer in there to make sure that if the project came forward, that we weren't starting the project with 100% of it accountable in case there was something foreseen. So I believe in how we were structuring for First Avenue, if there was money for the medallions, and then House Bar around the corner, if we could do all the way down Second and Elm, was to have good alternates throughout the scope of the work.
Okay.
So, yes, there is still some flexible money in there.
And we were waiting to bring on the engineer of record before we move forward with those efforts so that we were sure that we could go through that whole process.
Working on getting the scope of work done right now, and then come June 9th is when that contract starts and we can start getting a true estimate forward.
So if that number was $10,000 less, that wouldn't be hard. Still a good job.
If I remember right, I think you had said, Commissioner, that you wanted like a $80,000 to $100,000 buffer zone to work with for some of the bid alternates. So if we're talking 100,000 compared to 90,000, it could be an issue, but I think it would be okay.
My thought on this is if we got a buffer like that, we asked for a recommendation from our staff. I think we should follow the recommendation from our staff this evening. And I would say we should take it from the project budget.
Staff has given two different recommendations, yes, so which one? Yeah.
Well, I don't, sorry, yeah, I guess different recommendations there. But what's the,
I can support that, her recommendation.
Remind us, Eileen, what was your recommendation?
My original recommendation was to take $10,000 out of projects. I didn't recall, the discussion that was had about bid alternates. I was just thinking in the overall scheme of things, $10,000 isn't a lot of money. That money could, if there is some question about having enough money, I think we could also take some from the street fund and complement that as well. So that's part of the thinking.
Yeah, you guys all voted for the increase, and that's fine. But if you're taking out 5,000 out of the beautification marketing, you're saying that something presumably their value is now going to be only 80% of what it was earlier. So it's that you're talking about a 20% decrease in the beautification of Canby, whereas if you take it out of the projects, you're, and go, it's going to be almost a rounding error on that other number. And so I think if people think that the beautification and marketing is an important thing, taking 20% of it away might not be the best thing, because remember, when we allocate budget, we're actually doing things. It's not just money, it's where we want to do something with that. So I'm thinking that perhaps 5,000 out of the beautification program would be a bad idea unless we decided that we don't want to use that program. In that case, that is a decision saying we want to use less of that program at a substantially greater percentage than you would if you're in the projects. The projects, it's almost a rounding error difference, whereas this is just a 20% decrease in the mission. Now, if we don't believe in the mission, then eliminate it, but.
That's a fair point. I wasn't, and then to be clear, I didn't make a motion, I was floating the idea for conversation, so.
So that was just my sort of mathematical, logical reasoning.
Yes,
And I agree. I think 10,000 out of a $1.8 million budget is a lot different than 10,000 out of a much smaller beautification. And we know that beautification projects are, pretty immediate when we're using them versus the projects could be pretty near. So again, routing council's
I make a motion to lower the URB project budget from by $10,000 to offset the increase in the facade improvement program, and lower, so therefore lowering the URD project's budget number to $1,827,807.
All right, it has been moved by Mayor Hodson to deduct $10,000 from the URD projects, and seconded by Council President Hensley. Any more discussion?
Just for some clarification on your numbers, I don't know if that number, you gave it 1.827817, and you said 1.827807, that it would be 1.817.
7, that's true.
Good point.
Sorry. I took $10 away.
Sorry, I just want to make sure that it was.
1.817.
It was $10,000, not $10.
No, earlier when I said I've been running for a long day. There we
I'm
go.
not super good at that.
You know what a zero looks like?
You know what a zero looks like.
Put the comma on the wrong place, sorry.
$10 an hour, 399.
We're getting there.
All right. Now we have the right number in there. Are we ready ready for a vote? All right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Are there any abstentions? All right, then it has passed. Okay. So, Council President Hensley, well, there's been a couple of comments about the, something to be moved into the general, budget. Is that something you want to discuss now, or? Well, we talked about something to the, operating budget, moving some dollars to that.
Oh, Council Davis and I have already addressed that, and it appears that the Urban Renewal Agency Director doesn't agree in the right direction on that, so we're going to go with it, unless you convince her that we do it to the general fund. But we do have Commissioner Haddon online now, so I don't know if he wants to offer anything before we move to approve the budget.
Council Pat?
No, I'm just joining in, so I'll probably end up abstaining.
All right. Commissioner Davis, do you have any more you want to say about the operating budget? Okay. Yeah, I feel like beating a dead horse here, so I'm not happy, but that is the way it's going apparently.
All right, then. We have a motion to approve the budget, then? The urban renewal budget?
The number that goes in there would be the Scott, what's the number we need to put in this motion?
We're okay with the proposed debt fund, URA debt fund? No changes?
Oh, we didn't talk about the debt fund yet. We need to talk about the debt fund. We need to talk about page 5 before we can vote on that. Oh, yeah, the debt service fund, because we're gonna pay this off in next year. So we're still scheduled to pay the last payment June 2026, correct?
Correct.
And there's no way to pay it earlier, correct?
You can pay it earlier.
Like, it doesn't benefit.
It doesn't do it.
Right,
No interest saving, you can't pay it early. saving.
No, yeah, our amortization schedule tells us our interest. So there's no interest savings paying out early.
It's not simple.
we've done all the little shell-gamey refining things we can do to save as many pennies as we can. We've discussed all of those options, so. So I feel like this is, as long as we're on schedule as we planned, I'm okay with that. Anybody else have a question?
Choice, right? Because we can't just say we don't want to pay them that.
We could, but that wouldn't look good.
You get in trouble.
If it's able to do it, why can't we? If it's up for a vote, that means we can say no, right? If we can't say no, then it's not really for a vote.
Final payment of the debt is $3,910,000 plus interest. That's what it's. So the amount of the budget that we present that we have to put in the motion is this 7.8 million number, right?
Yeah, it doesn't change because we just flip-flop them. You should have it right.
New Chair, move that the Budget Committee of the Canby Urban Renewal Agency approve the budget for 2025-2026 fiscal year
in the amount of $7,861,487, and to levy property taxes for the 2025-2026 fiscal year for the maximum amount of revenue that may be raised by the taxes under Section 1C, Article 11 of the Oregon Constitution and ORS Chapter 4.
I'll second that.
Motion has been made by Councilor Waterman, seconded by Councilor Stearns. Any other questions or discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Anyone abstaining?
I'll abstain.
All right, so the motion has been approved.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I move that we adjourn the Urban Renewal Agency meeting.
Seconded.
That has been moved by Council President Hensley and seconded by Mayor Hudson to adjourn the urban renewal and budget meeting. And we are now adjourned and moving into the community break.
Good to see our bond.
We will take a 5-minute break.
in Canby. I'd like to to order the City of Canby Budget Committee meeting for May 15th, 2025. Start with roll call.
Katie Joyner, financial analyst.
Scott Schlag, Finance Director.
Eileen Stein, city administrator.
Lee Wigan, URA Budget Committee member.
No.
Budget.
The regular budget committee.
Oh,
I think he's still staying there.
that one.
Yeah, they're not part of the budget committee, so it's good to hear you.
I can sleep.
Okay.
Daniel Stearns, city councilor.
Shouldn't be with the city council.
Brian House Mayor.
Budget member Kim Wigan.
City Council President Tracy Hensley.
Councilor Paul Waterman.
Jack Harrison, Budget Committee.
David Tate, Budget Committee. Sean Barlow, Budget Committee.
Kathy Mulligan.
Jessica Roberts, court.
Jose Gonzalez, captain, Canby Police.
Eric Leitinen, Canby Swim Center.
George Stroh, Chief of Police.
Don Hardy, Planning Director.
Monica Stone, Public Works.
Marissa Ely, library director.
Jamie Stickle, Economic Development Director.
Todd Wood, Fleet, Transit, and IT.
Tyler Nizer, Economic Development and Tourism Coordinator.
Spencer Pollock, Public Works.
Ryan Potter, Planning Manager.
Maya Benham, Administrative Director and City Recorder.
Teresa Ridgely, deputy city recorder.
And we have Councilor Patton online and Councilor Maldonado online.
Yep.
All right, so we go to old business and going to approve the minutes of the meeting May 16th, May 23rd, and May 30th of 2024. Budget committee meeting, do we have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the minutes from May 16, May 23, and May 30, 2024 Budget Committee meetings.
All right, there's been a motion from Councilor President Hensley and Councilor Waterman to approve the minutes from the May 16th, May 23rd, and May 30th, 2024 Budget Committee meeting. Are there any questions?
I have a question real quick.
Yes, Councilor Patton.
Were there minutes for the mid-year budget review? Or is that what these are for?
That's not what this is for.
Not yet.
Not ready yet, she said.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, all in favor? Aye. Anyone?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, motion has been approved to approve the minutes from the May 16th, May 23rd, May 30th, 2024 Budget Committee budget meeting. On to new business is the election of the Budget Committee Chair.
Madam Chair, I nominate you to remain chair.
Second. All right, we have a motion to nominate Kim Wiggins from Council President Hensley, seconded by Councilor Waterman. Are there any other nominations? Questions, discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Anyone?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, we have nominated Kim Wiggins as Budget Committee Chairperson. Thank you. All right, now we are on to electing the Budget Committee Vice Chair.
Madam Chair, I nominate Councilor Jason Patton to remain as vice chair.
We have a second?
Second.
Oh, second. Councilor Moblin, okay. So we have a motion to elect Councilor Patton, I'm so sorry. I'm Remy too. Councilor Patton as the Budget Committee Vice Chair and seconded by Councilor Maldonado. Are there any other nominations? questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
I will abstain.
I was waiting for him to oppose. Nay.
All right. We have elected Counselor Haddon as the Budget Committee Vice Chair. All right. And a budget message from Eileen. All right, go ahead to the next slide. Thank you. I'll do this myself. So, items that drive the budget, and any given year, I take a look at what's going on at the national, state, and local, environment. And predominantly, they can be summed up by inflation coming down a little bit, but there's a lot of uncertainties going on, especially with the federal government, that we don't know how they're gonna show up in terms of tariffs and price increases and all of that. So, so it's very uncertain time. The cost of goods and services, we don't know which ones are gonna go up, which ones are gonna go down. And so, it's, again, a very uncertain time. We also take a look at demographics. Demographics tell us how much state shared revenue we'll receive and other types of planning data and other types of demographic information. So we look at that. We look at our capital projects. How much are we going to spend in capital projects? And what are the revenue sources for those? We look at grant opportunities. We look at the goals that the city council has set. And we look at revenue assumptions and labor assumptions. So those are all different things that go into factoring how we prepare the budget. Nope, wrong one. So these are the 5 council goals for the year. They did not change, actually, just the sub-objectives changed in each of them. So, so they are on page 2 of the budget message. You can see the objectives there if you look at the goals. So promote financial stability, align resources to address future community growth, plan a transportation system. So again, they have all stayed the same, the major goal category, but the objectives have been mixed and matched and prioritized, and all of that. Revenue assumptions, property taxes, utility charges, intergovernmental charges, infrastructure. So these are all the major revenue sources, including fund balance. So. Citywide expenses by category, we have 17 million in personnel services, again, the largest, a large component of our budget because we are largely a service organization. So materials and services, capital outlay, debt service, transfers out, and reserve for future and fund balance. Totals a $95 million budget. Labor assumptions, last year we budgeted 1.9. We did a typical true up where we allocated where is staff going to be in what category, and this year we're going to have 103.7 FTE. Wages and benefits have gone up a little bit. COLAs, we're budgeting 5% for COLAs this year, but our labor agreements have not been settled yet. So health insurance is about the same. The big number here is that our PERS rates are going up to 15%. So that's a big, huge bump that we have to accommodate somehow.
I am sorry that is so small that page 44, you can see that calculation a little bit better. And this is really the essence of what I wanted to talk about this year. In that management team and I the leadership team and I made a strategic decision that in order to avoid reductions in force, and instead of recommending strategic cuts and reduce strategic reserve, that because this is a good year and we are receiving $1 million, as I mentioned before, in urban renewal next year, that we made the decision in order to avoid layoffs or reductions in force, that we would intentionally lower our strategic reserve to 15%. So that's what we are recommending to you. And we hope that the budget committee would agree with the wisdom of this decision. So, this proposed budget attempts to meet those goals to varying degrees, to achieve the council goals to varying degrees, but we're not sure if we're going to be able to achieve all of the council's goals. We haven't had any discussion about where your service priorities are going to be. And so we need to have that discussion in order to be able to make further reductions. If we want to have full-scale reductions in programs, some areas, or if we want to just lead a little bit from taking 10% from this program or 10% from that program. So we really need a comprehensive discussion about where we're going to go with those types of decisions before I can make a recommendation as to whether to reduce parks maintenance or and again, we're talking about just the general fund only. So whether to reduce park maintenance or economic development or police services or exactly what. So again, the leadership team and I put our heads together and decided that we were going to make this recommendation to you. We also have other things that are undetermined at this point. As I mentioned, we have labor agreements that are still outstanding. And it's just a crazy time. So city departments have used various means of controlling costs. Tight belt and squeezing as much as possible out of the remainder of fiscal year 25, 24, 25, and into 25, 26. So we have made some reductions, but to make further reductions, we still feel, or we feel that more direction is needed from the council. Really, that's the essence of the message this year. We do have some capital projects that are highlighted or that are included in the budget that we can go through as we go through each program in the general fund. Other than that, we will take your questions as they come. So it will be a bridge year as the city expects to benefit from the closure of the urban renewal district, but hard policy choices lie ahead. I don't feel comfortable making those recommendations on your behalf because I feel that those are policy decisions and you as the policymakers need to make those decisions. So I'm putting that back on you. I will administer whatever budget it is that you want me to administer, but the policy choices I feel belong in the hands of the city council.
Councilor Stearns, you had?
I have a couple, well, I have lots of questions, but I'll do a couple of them right now. So
On this page 44, I think I asked you earlier, but you said you had an answer, is when we say the operating end of the, the percentage off, well, okay, the in fund balance, it says 1,818,499. and 499. Where is that number found in the budget itself? I'm just trying to picture that. We'll probably argue over that reserve percentage, so I'm trying to find out where the numerator and the denominator are found. You said that, so when we say percentage of budget, we're saying percentage of the operating revenue, which is $12 million, correct? And so that's the denominator. What's the numerator? Where do I find the numerator?
So page 45 is going to give you the total for 1.8. So your workers' compensation reserve, your Maple Park turf replacement reserve, and your unrestricted, those are all added together. The PEG is not included as that because that is actually a third-party restriction is placed on that reserve. So that's why that is excluded from that ending fund balance total. The council can actually take those workers' comp reserve and the Maple Park turf replacement, and they can choose to do something else with that because they put the restriction on it themselves. So if there's a third, that's why it's part of that.
So we have the unrestricted of 1,753,522 plus the 50,000 plus the 14,977. I'll trust you that adds up to the. Okay, so I just want to make sure that we know what the denominator is. And then the other question, well, I have lots of questions, but the other question is, it seems like we have a projected end balance that if that were to be correct, then that would change the projected, or a projected imbalance of 25 budget. And it seems like we have a reserve now, projected reserve of 42%. Has that been accounted for in the proposed 25-26 budget?
Yeah, so if you kind of look to the proposed, that 4710, the 35, and the 14,977 totals the 4.8 at the top. So that whole number goes up to the top of our beginning fund balance for our proposed. So that's the projection that we would end up as of 6/30 of 2025, and that would be our 7/1/2025 beginning number.
And so that's part, so that projected is part of is going to be the beginning.
The starting, yeah.
Okay,
Sorry, that's our starting.
So we're going from a 42%, and maybe I'm just not understanding this correctly, but we're going from 42% to 15% in 1 year's spend?
In the budget, yes.
Okay. So the question is, does that mean it's just a huge increase in cost, or is it revenue declined, or what's the, I'm looking for the macro, because I know in the individual numbers can kind of get lost in the weeds, but it seems like there's a dramatic difference for 1 year. I don't know if there's a kind of explanation why it happened this year, not last year, and not, yeah.
Well, I mean, without looking at what we had last year, this is basically going off of all of the directors' efforts of what they believe that they are going to be incurring. And again, it's a budget, it's fantasy, it's their best guess of what they think is going to happen. That's pretty much, I mean, yes, property taxes are only growing at 3%. And we see a ton of other cities suffering the same problem we are. The materials and services are way outpacing our ability to keep up. We continue to look for grant revenues. We're trying to find those other things. We're looking at, how can we bring in more revenue to help offset that? But again, this is just looking at, this is what we all as a group believe that is going to be needed to operate the general fund this year.
Okay, so basically it's a general fund increase that's far outpacing the general fund expenditure increase. That's going to be outpacing the general fund revenues. And this appears to be a trend that's going to be happening because I don't see the 3% cap being changed anytime soon, correct? So if we did a projection of this, this is bad this year, how much worse is it gonna be the next year, or the year after that? So, I mean, I don't know if that's something we can answer, but you believe, so right now, we are not cutting any kind of staff, or reduction in workforce, whatever you call it, this year in hopes that something comes next year to save it, or is it something that, what I'm concerned about is we're just kind of doing a delaying action when maybe a gradual reduction might be better than late. I mean, not saying it's gonna happen, but just to be dramatic, laying off half the staff next year, because all of a sudden like, oh, we're waiting for something to come rescue us that didn't come. So that's kind of my general, I guess, question and criticism is we're reducing the reserve, and so the next year the choice will be reduce the reserve even more or cut people, and at a certain point, the reserve goes to zero, but we don't even go that far. So I don't know, I just feel that we may be postponing bad decisions because they're bad, but
Yeah.
I was saying when I was changing my kids' diapers, postponing it doesn't make it any better.
Good point. But, you know,
What I don't have a sense of, I understand and I appreciate your point very much, Counselor Stearns. What I don't have a sense of is the target, because we have labor agreements that haven't been settled yet, and we have uncertainties. I don't know what to cut to. And so, and I don't know if I don't know that it makes sense to ask everybody to roll back 10%, or if it makes more sense to, wholesale cut out this program here. Close the library. Library doesn't even matter because the library is funded by the library district. But do you want to cut back on police services? Do you want to cut back on planning? There's a lot going on in the city, and I just don't have a sense of what the council's priorities. I think Councilor Stearns, you made the comment about, we need to know what each department provides. And that was part of the reason that I said to the council, do you want to have an extra meeting to figure out what it is that the council, decides is the highest priority? And you said, no, we're tired, and I understand that. But that's what I was after is, what do you want to begin to cut?
Yeah, and I would.
In terms of programs and services, because I just don't know that, rolling everybody back 10%, for example, or whatever the number might be, is the right way to go about it.
So I may have been tired that night, but obviously I'm very interested in having a meeting to do that. But one of the things that my concern is, if we pass a budget, it is budget, but it's not really what we want to spend. I mean, are we held? I assume we're kind of held to these numbers that we're doing right now. And so I'm wondering if we should have that, I don't know, we're all busy, but squeeze in a meeting sometime when legally feasible to kind of ask those questions, because I just hate the idea of sort of kicking it down the can and decreasing the reserves without really an end in sight or a plan to make the hard decisions. Like I say, no one likes to make those kind of decisions. In my work, I've had to lay people off before. It's not fun, but it's not something that the business can be, or in my case, be sustainable if decisions aren't made. And I just wondering if you might be putting the cart before the horse if we don't have that discussion first, but maybe that was because scheduling, or I don't know. We're all busy, I know, but I don't. I guess I'm not talking.
Councilor Davis?
Thank you. And thank you to the Budget Committee for your time tonight. Thank you to the staff. I totally appreciate you guys being here and the work that you've done in preparation for the budget.
Can you speak up just a little bit, please?
Sure. I would
you.
like to speak to the budget message of the city administrator, who's the budget officer. The city council has a reserve policy. It's been put in place by prior city councils. and at the time, they were experiencing financial difficulties. I appreciate the hard work put in by those city councils in bringing the reserve account up to where it's currently at, in case we have another 2008 or significant, and in this case, we have a significant problem in Oregon and in the nation with cutbacks. The region and the state are experiencing financial shortfalls, all agencies throughout the state. Cities within our region are also experiencing significant shortfalls. Just the other night, Beaverton announced substantial cutbacks, including personnel cutbacks, because of budget shortfalls. Our own school district has a shortfall in which they have to account for $10 million. ODOT, it's in the budget message as well, but ODOT's in significant financial difficulties right now. The county, all of these agencies are having to make the tough decisions in regards to how to balance the budget. The city administrator and the finance director reported a $3.1 million shortfall on February 26th of 2025. If you want to watch the YouTube, it's at 2 hours and 24 seconds, and you can see the announcement of that budget shortfall. I haven't been convinced that there is not a budget shortfall because nothing has been presented to the city council. I'd like to speak to utilizing the reserve account to bail out the financial shortfall. We have a board or city council policy established by the city council in regards to the use of, or how much they wanted in the reserve, 20 to 25%. The council has not approved the utilization of the reserve account and reducing the reserves. That has to be done at a city council meeting and have that discussion. And then the department heads in the city, the budget chair, budget officer can then proceed with the preparation of a balanced budget. The recommendation of using $1 million, or that we'll see $1 million on July 1st, 2026, when the URA closes. We're already seeing $425,000 that are going to be brought over from economic development, salaries, wages, as well as a lot of discussions by the parks in regards to trying to increase the parks, doing something with our pool. That money has been spent. And so we are not going to be able to replenish our reserve account. We will not be able to bring that back up to the 20 to 24%. This budget actually adds FTEs in regards to, there's 2 FTEs in this budget. The budget does not present fiscal stability as indicated in Goal 1, the council goals. There's other mitigating factors. As already stated, the PERS rates are going up, uncertainties in regards to labor negotiations, as well as projects that have already been cut in the budget in order to present a balanced budget. Based on the budget prepared with taking funds from the reserve account with no reductions, I would make a motion to adjourn this meeting and direct the budget officer to prepare a budget without reducing the reserve account. We have very competent department heads here, and they know their departments. They know where they can recommend to the budget officer on where to make those cuts. I've gone through this budget in detail, and I'd be more than happy to share some of those budget reductions. But I think tonight, without having input from the department heads to the budget officer, and the budget officer making some tough decisions on where to cut this budget without taking anything from the reserve account. Thank you.
Is that a motion, Jim?
Yes.
I'll second it.
Dang it, you got there first.
What was that?
I said, dang it, you got there first.
Oh.
Well, in the matter of discussion, I agree wholeheartedly, Counselor Davis. We do have a policy of 20-25%. This is reducing it to 15%, which in my opinion is absolutely unacceptable. And we have been adding people when we've kind of made it clear that, especially after the mid-year review with a $3 million whoops, hiring freeze was recommended. That didn't happen either. I feel like council direction that you're asking for has been ignored. So I concur, we need to abandon this budget and have it reworked towards, comes in within our policy. And I have a question also I'd like to pose. This page 44 shows the projected for 2025 being 11 million with a operating revenue with a 42% and the fund balance percentage. However, the adopted budget was 15 million, 15.5, with and a fund balance operating percentage of 23. So I've got the adopted budget in my hand. It doesn't match what you're putting in the proposed budget. So I have trouble honestly trusting any of these numbers.
Mr. Tate, did you have a question?
I had a question, but it was a question about the budget report, which is not related to the motion that's on the floor. So I guess I have to wait.
Okay.
Can I just clarify what the motion that in front of us is? I know you read it, but the motion was to, I think I had several parts to it. One was to convene to adjourn this meeting. And the second one was to direct
Direct the budget officer to prepare a budget without taking any funds from the reserve
We
account.
want to remand the budget back to the officer.
So
to
I'm
rework
wondering
it.
if we should break that apart into more than one motion.
Well, I
Seems
guess.
like one can be voted for, not the other one, or other one can, without one. Since there's multiple, seems like there's multiple asks, and that's all I'm saying.
Counselor Patton? You have.
Yeah, so here's the deal, we now have a motion on the floor to adjourn the meeting. We need to either agree or disagree to do that. And essentially, any discussion going on that's not related to that is unwarranted. I have some questions that I would like to ask. It sounds like others have some questions they would like to ask. I am not for adjourning the meeting until I've been able to ask some questions.
Counselor Davis, you can adjust your motion to just remand the budget back to the officer and not adjourn.
Correct. I'll make that motion, the adjustment to the motion.
And I will, since I'm the seconder, I will second the adjusted motion.
All right, so we have a motion to remand the budget back to the budget officer. And it's been made by Counselor Davis and seconded by Council President Hensley. Is there any more discussion?
Yes.
Counselor Patton?
Yes, so regarding the remand of the budget back to the city, or the budget officer, I guess one of the things that I'm curious about is, I agree we have problems here, and we need to really take a good, hard look at this, and not just come up with one option, but come up with a few different options as to how we can slice this apple. Some of the confusion that I have is, this is a very short look out. Like, it has been mentioned that this is a bridge budget and these sort of things, and that the fund reserve would be drawn down. But my question and concern is, what is the further projection? So these are the next 1 to 2 years of what that would look like. What I would expect is some sort of strategic plan as to how adjustments will be made, not only in this budget, but the next several budgets, in order to get that reserve back up to where it needs to be. If it means that over the next couple of years, we have to dip a little bit into that reserve in order to get the ship to the next port, as long as it's not a huge reduction, it's within reason, and it makes sense to spend that money there, then I would probably be okay with something like that. But I'm not gonna just do it based on what I see here. I need to see a more strategic plan, even if it's rough, because I understand that we really can't, no one has an accurate crystal ball for this stuff, but there has to be some way to look at the previous year's budgets and use that as a way to forecast for the next 4-5 years as to how we can bridge this gap, maybe spend down the reserve a little bit the next year or two, but then start to correct that curve to get it back up to the 20 to 25%, in the next couple of years. If I see that, if I am provided with some options as to where these cuts can be made, where the belt can be tightened, I'm all for it. But as far as to just say, this is what we've got, where do we go from here? We need more information. So that is my thought on this.
Councilor President Hensley.
Thank you. Yes, I agree with Councilor Pata that we need more information about what the future looks like. Granted, we don't have a crystal ball, but it seems like we're just shooting in the dark with a zero plan and taking from the reserves as a big fat Band-Aid. And the use of the word bridge year in the budget message was disturbing to me because, as Councilor Davis pointed out, that $1 million coming back to the general fund is basically already accounted for. So it's not going to fill up this hole that we're creating in our reserves. So I wanted to point that out. And honestly, I think that some of these questions could have been answered ahead of time if we'd had more than 2 days with the budget book before this meeting, but that's another topic, so.
Councilor Stearns?
The way I'm seeing, maybe I'm misinterpreting Councilor Davis, but I think one of the issues is that council had a policy to go for 20%, and now you're asking to switch it from 20 to 15%. And of course, there's consequences to not doing it, which could be reduction in staff or other kind of projects being cut. And then the other consequences is to change what the council said. So what I think may be necessary, what I would actually like to see is a city council meeting where just on the agenda, I don't think it'd be called a work session, but it probably wouldn't be, but a sort of a council meeting where we say something to the effect on public record that if we do not want to go from 20 to 15, that we, as a council, accept the consequences of something. If that hurts people, then we should be on record of saying that right away as a council we're voting on it, having yeses or nos. And then I think as well, in that meeting, it would be good to have the council sort of prioritize where, if cuts are necessary, if we decide, you could try to sell us specifically on whether we want to reduce it. It doesn't have to be from 20 to 15, it could be 20 to 17, 20 to 18. It's not a yes, all or nothing question, but if we are agreeing to cuts, then we need to have a say in how to prioritize those cuts. And so I guess if the current motion is to give it back to you to give us another budget, I think in between that, there needs to be a meeting so that council can come into agreement on what the actual direction is, knowing at least the potential. We don't have a crystal ball, but at least what consequences we as a council are ready to accept. So I guess to sum it up, I think I agree with what Councilor Davis is saying, but I think in between, there's not a lot of time, I know, but in between you're preparing the new thing and this meeting, there should be a council meeting that just lays out that issue so we're all on record of what we want to do. Does my kind of make sense?
Councilor Hensley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I agree with Councilor Stearns there, but I just wanted to clarify that it's not a policy of 20%, so we're not going from 20 to 15. The actual fund balance policies on page 120 of your book. Unrestricted fund balance in the sum of committed, assigned, and unassigned fund balance in any individual fund. In the general fund, the city will strive to maintain an unrestricted fund balance of between 20 and 25% of annual operating revenue. If the fund balance falls below 30% of the annual operating revenue, a plan will be created outlining how and when the fund balance will be replenished. So we're going from 30% is the trigger to come up with the plan, and we're being presented with 15%. That's unacceptable.
Yes, Counselor Davis.
Thank you. And this would I agree with Commissioner Stearns or Council Stearns, but, and also Jason Patton's comments too, but that would be a perfect time for us to at least be asked for a recommendation to the city council that we lower that reserve. But I agree with Jason, we've got to see what the impacts are of lowering that reserve. We can't just lower it when prior city councils have worked so hard to bring that up.
Anyone else? Yes, Counselor Waterman.
I kind of agree with everything else, everything that's being said here. But I also have to make sure that the self-mandated reserve that we put on ourselves, it's important and it's good to have. The recommendation, from the professionals across the nation for a healthy city that the rest of the nation uses is the 16.7%. So the self-mandated 20 to 25% or 30, how far we go, is very helpful. But it's also there for a reason for situations like these. I think it needs to be a more collaborative effort to understand how much to use and where and so forth, working together with city staff and the council to do that. But I don't want to go too far down the sacred cow that it sounds like we can't touch it. And it needs to be, it's there for a reason, but we just need to work together to make sure how much we use and so forth.
Yes, Mayor Hodson.
Thank you. Just a couple of, comments and questions. And I guess my first thing is, we throw around the URA dollars, urban renewal dollars is coming into the general fund. And I know that there's been a lot of conversation about what we'd like to use that money for, but there has been nothing determined and set in stone. So if, it gets to that point where it is about building the reserves back, and if that's what the council at that time decides to do, then that's what that is decided on. Just because we've had conversations about what we'd like to do, I don't believe that we should necessarily lock that down as being spoken for. The other question I have is, there was the mention of 2 new hires in the last part of this fiscal year, Councilor Davis? So in this coming budget, there's 2 new position hires. What are those 2 new position hires, or that we're proposing?
I know one of them is a police officer,
Okay.
and that's the only one I know of. And it's fully reimbursable from TriMet, so it's new. And then I don't know who the other person is.
Yeah, if we did that, proposal is a new police officer.
Will you put on your mic?
Sorry, it is a new police officer and it's fully reimbursable by a different entity. So it would actually, no cost to the city, plus we would actually bring in some revenue because of it. And I'll explain that when the time comes.
So what's the second position?
So I think the second one could be the one that's moving from Parks General Fund over to wastewater, which is enterprise.
Okay.
It could be.
Okay. I think that's what I remember that being. And so Eileen and Scott, if in fact we don't lower, if we stay at the low end at 20%, what is the impact to the budget? Like what would we have to restructure dollar-wise out of the general fund to keep it at that 20% or the 25%.
Yeah, so to get, again, we're dealing with a variable of not having a contract in place or a COLA increase. So again, we don't know what that's going to be, so we left it at 5%. In order to get to us to a 20%, we would need to cut the budget, the general fund budget, by 15% across the board. So we would be looking at somewhere around $678,000 to cut. And that $30,000 difference that Council Hensley pointed out was, this year's a correction to last year. There was a cell that was not added into the Excel file. So this year's budget number that you're looking at is the actual correct number. Last year's was 30,000 less, and it was the police budget, employee benefit of 30,000 that was not
On the budget
added
detail?
into the Excel file. So I caught that this year and then made that correction.
So the published adopted budget's incorrect?
From last year,
Yeah.
it was 30,000, it would $30,000, yeah, less.
$30,000 doesn't make a difference between 23% and 42%. Or
So you're
maybe,
looking
maybe
at-
you're not thinking of,
You're
maybe
looking
you're
at
not
23,
getting what I'm talking
yeah,
about.
so you're looking at 23% as
I'm looking
a
at
budget
page
number?
39 in the adopted budget versus page 44 in the proposed budget, the citywide by fund, where it tells us what the percentage of the operating revenue is. The adopted budget for 2025, this column in the published book is 23%. The projected in the proposed budget is 42%.
Right.
It's not $30,000 difference, it's a $4 million difference in the operating revenue. You got 15.5 versus 11.4. So I don't know that we're talking about the same pages.
23% was what was last year's budget? That's what you're trying to.
That's what the
get at?
budget detail says in this book. That's what our revenue, our reserve was 23%, but this is saying
Based
42.
on, yeah, so I made corrections this year because the things that were added into operating revenue were not supposed to be considered operating revenue. So that's why I even added a caveat down at the bottom where operating revenue excludes beginning fund balances and transfers and other sources in
Okay.
accordance with GFOA and the Oregon Accounting Manual as a best practice. So that number, that 15 million that you're looking at, that got you to 23, should actually be 11,638. That's operating revenue for the year.
Okay, well, I guess I'm really confused because none of the numbers in this published budget match what's here. I mean, if you go to the FY '23 actual and you look at the FY '23 actual, those numbers don't match. So I'm like, I don't understand, I feel like we're comparing apples to oranges here. Do you see what I'm saying, Kim? FY '23 actual?
So making
FY '23 actual,
correct changes to those numbers
68,
to give the most accurate data is what I did this year. Because last year was my first go-around trying to understand everything that predecessors had done in an Excel file.
Okay.
And how did the
We-
FY 2022
Two years ago
actual
changed.
change?
I don't have 2022.
22, well, no,
23.
Yeah, 23 and 24 don't match either. So that's why I'm like, what is this page even about?
Page 39.
Page 39 versus the proposed budget.
It's similar with what I just said with this year, I made sure that in accordance with GFOA and the Oregon Manual, operating revenue agreed to what operating revenue should be, not including transfers in, other sources, and beginning fund balance. If I go back and look at the 15.5 that was last year, that included an additional amount that should have been excluded because that's not operating revenue. Operating revenue is day-to-day.
Okay.
Not transfers in, not other sources. That's according to GFOA and the Oregon Budget Manual. I'm sorry, the Oregon
We're
Accounting.
told then that the predecessor, the previous directors have given wrong numbers and you've corrected them. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying what they have done, what they did, I can't answer for. I just know that operating revenue, if one looks at the definition of operating revenue, it doesn't include those items that I basically had a caveat for down here.
Okay.
So that gives us, because that's day-to-day, trying to pay the bills operating revenue, money coming in and us paying it, not transfers, not beginning fund balances, those types of things.
Okay, but the actual comment I wanted to make, okay, sorry. You called on me, but that's sorry.
Okay. Mr. Barwick, did you have a question?
Yeah, just touching back to the policy that Council President Hensley brought up about the plan to outline how and when the fund balance would be replenished. Was that done? Is there a plan? If so, if we're asking to bring the reserves down to 15%, this asks for a plan on how to get it back to 25% or even the 30%. Do we have a plan? Is
We
there
don't
plan
have a
that goes
plan
with it?
yet. That's the plan that I want to work with the city council on. I feel like the cuts that are made, even $678,000, I don't feel comfortable making those kinds of programmatic or service cuts without the council's input. So, it feels very much like this is a team effort, and, my department directors will do their best to identify what those cuts are, but those cuts amount to very, significant service reductions potentially as well. And so I want the council to be aware of what those, and I would prefer that this be a collaborative effort, and not just put it on me and I either got it right or got it wrong.
I feel like, again, kind of in agreement that if you're gonna ask us to approve a budget that reduces this, that we need to also have the plan so that we can approve it correctly. So I think, in agreement with remanding it back, I think before this comes back to us again, we need to have that plan.
My plea would be to the council and the budget committee to at least, it's 8:00 at night. If there are questions that you want to ask, especially the general fund departments, please ask them tonight. We've got a little bit of time still, and please ask them tonight, and we can get a start on getting some sense of where you might be interested based on having heard it from the department directors. So that would be my plea.
Okay, Councilor Patton.
Yes, so a couple of things. First, I want to clarify what I had, my ask from earlier. What I would like to see is each department director identify 3 things within their department that can be reduced and what sort of impact each reduction will have on services moving forward. That way, that can be presented to us so that we then have some options. And we will get input from each department director as to what they feel, where they feel the cuts can be made. I have been through this process before with the city. This sort of thing is never pretty. And it's been way uglier in the past. And I would prefer to prevent that this time around. So that is what I would like to see, is each department director come up with 3 things that could be cut in their department or reduced or shifted to create some sort of savings in their department, and what sort of impact that would have on citizens and on the budget as a whole. The other thing I would recommend is that if members of the budget committee have some questions, if they would be able to distill those down and send them to the city in advance so that so they can be worked on and prepared for the next meeting, I think that would be helpful. This way, it's not random rapid fire as far as what this is done. And this sort of thing has been done in the past, in past budgets. Members of the committee have been encouraged to send that information in order for the city to do some research in advance and then have answers to those questions at a subsequent meeting. The other thing I would like to know, and I would like to get a feel, so essentially what is being suggested is that this budget go back to the city, it get worked on, come to the council makes some decisions as to where cuts or not cuts could be made, and then that come back to the budget committee. At this point in time, the budget committee, the citizen members of this budget committee have now seen this budget. They have now been part of this process. My question is, and unfortunately I'm not there, so I can't see head shaking, but would the members of the budget, the citizen members of the budget committee be comfortable with, as part of this reprimand, that budget coming back to the council to then make those recommendations, to then bring it to the budget committee?
I need to remind everybody, if there's a motion on the floor, we need to be speaking to the motion.
Yes, and this is part of the remand. If the budget is being remanded, there's going to be work done on it, and it's going to come back to the budget committee. I have asked for information to be provided as part of that remand coming back to the budget committee or to the council. My next question is, if this is worked on by the council as it is proposed, then is the budget committee, citizen members, okay with us doing that work on their behalf?
And then bringing it back to them though, right?
Correct, yes.
There's heads shaking. There's one saying no. There's two nods yes. And oh, what are your thoughts, Chair?
Just seems like that's a lot to put together by next Thursday, or are we changing the meetings?
No, it would have to be next Thursday. So it would be the council trying to get together here or add it to the agenda for Wednesday's city council meeting.
And then to get it together by the next day?
Yeah, that's what we're possibly talking about.
Is that too big of an ask?
Call the question on Councilman Davis's motion.
Yes.
That means, he called for the question, so we have to vote. That ends discussion. And we
Could
vote.
you repeat the motion just to make sure we know exactly what's going on?
To remand the budget back to the budget officer to bring it back to us that's in line with the policy for reserves.
And who
Did we had a second, right?
The motion was made by Councilor Davis and seconded by me.
So we're all in favor of that?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Nay.
Motion
Okay,
passes.
so motion passes. So the budget is remanded back to the budget officer. And yes, Mr. Tate.
I have a question. Can I ask a question on the received budget message, which was where we were on the agenda?
Yes.
On page 4, the revenue statement related to property taxes, there's residential, commercial, and industrial. Can you tell me what percentage of property taxes fit into each of those 3 categories? What percentage of our property taxes come from residential versus commercial versus industrial?
That's a good question. Scott?
That I don't have that kind of information. I have to try to either contact Clackamas County, but when we get our property taxes, it comes in and it doesn't give us that level of detail. We just get the dollars. So if you want that level of detail, we can try to contact Clackamas County and see if they have that. They probably do. I just don't know off 100% I can give you that answer right now.
Well, the reason I ask is that if 75% of our money in property taxes comes from residential, and we need to make cuts, then we should understand that 75% of the money is coming from residential, and maybe we need to make cuts on parts of the budget that are more reflective of industrial or commercial or et cetera. It just seemed to me it would be helpful to make sure that those people that are chipping in the most are making sure that they're getting the services, because it's not equally spread between all of those.
Right. No, that makes sense.
Is that something the county can tell us?
We'll probably have to research.
Sure.
Have to ask them, I guess.
It's just an inquiry that we'd have to make.
Thank you.
Councilor Patton, do you have another question, comment?
Yeah, so my question is that, so now we have voted to send this budget back to the budget officer to make cuts and then bring it back to this committee. And it allows no pre-work to be done on it as far as, the council making decisions as far as to where cuts should be made, how much we would like to get into the reserve or whatever. So what is the plan? Just to continue to go round and round on this for the next 2 days? For the next 2 meetings?
And I have a question about whether you're talking about the general fund departments only, or are you talking about all city funds? All city funds, all departments? Because not all the departments are impacted by this decision as well.
My suggestion might be if, just as a citizen to the city council, you guys might have a meeting soon to discuss the decision of whether or not you want to reduce the reserves, because if you have a decision as a city council, you make a decision to reduce the reserves, then you don't have to rework this budget. And so I think from my understanding, the main point was it was a council decision to not dip below a certain amount. So you need to get your council's permission to dip below that amount that they set before you can bring this budget to the budget committee. They might give you that permission. They might say, at that meeting, go back and cut it. So I don't know that that question can be answered until you have a meeting with your council to say, how do we want to move forward with this? Do we want to dip into our reserves, or do we want to rewrite the budget or rework the budget?
Yes.
So I don't think that decision is this body. I think that has to be done with your council.
Correct, and thank you, Sean. We can, and that conversation has to be noticed. So, I mean, it's a public meeting thing, so we would have to do that we can't make that decision as a council here tonight either. We'd have to do that in a council meeting, and we can do that. We can add it to a future agenda. We could probably still have time to add it to this next agenda. But we don't necessarily, to Councilor Patton's point, we don't necessarily have to stall this process because, as Eileen said, only the general fund is affected by this discussion. We can, next meeting, go forth with the other accounts and talk about those budget pieces. Are you in agreement, Councilor Davis?
Yes.
It's the reserves on the general fund that's the discussion. So even if we flip-flop the order that we do this, and that discussion is the last meeting, because that gives us a couple weeks then to work on it.
Yes, I agree with Jason as well. I think that we need to get this back to the city council as soon as possible and talk about the budget policy, the reserve policy. And once we determine that if the council approves or disapproves, but I think too, at that meeting, we can talk about priorities in regards to the city, in regards to if we have to make reductions, that would be an appropriate time to provide direction to the budget officer in regards to areas that are important, whether it's public safety, pool, parks, whatever.
Now, remember, the pool is on a separate levy, so
Right.
that's one of those funds that's not impacted by this
Okay.
discussion of the general fund.
Okay, yeah.
Right.
I just use that as an example.
Okay, yeah, no, I just want to.
But I think, Councilor Patton brings up some good points. But I think we just have to put the horse in front of the cart here and just talk about, do we agree with reducing the reserve account? If we don't, it's pretty clear what has to be done. We talk about priorities.
Yeah. Councilor Warner.
So in order to do that, I'm not quite sure going back to the staff to say, figure out what you can cut, because like, what does that mean? Like, how much do they know how much to cut? What's their objective on that? Because, so if we say that it needs to be 15% across the board, if you start there, and then we can say, this is what it's gonna look like, this is really gonna hurt if it's 50% in this department versus this department. And then we can say, okay, well, how much of the reserve could we use to possibly make that only 8% for that department instead of 15? So I think we kind of need to have both sets of information for us to be able to make a decision on not just priority, but also how much service is going to be affected in which departments.
Yeah, and not to put words in his mouth, but I feel like that's what Counselor Patton was asking for, is those 3 ideas so that and what the impacts would be, so we could have that.
Right, but you can pick 3 ideas, but
Yeah.
how do they know how much of the budget that those 3 ideas to actually focus on?
Yeah, a department might say, well, I made my 3 cuts, there $1,000 here and $1,000 there, and, they
Right.
cut $3,000 out of their budget, and they have, and it doesn't impact anything. So again, my plea is, if we still have time, allow the department directors, especially the general fund, to come down here and present their budgets. I'm not asking for your approval, but we can get this conversation started tonight. If you want to, maybe take a 5-minute break and come back and allow each of the general fund departments to present what it is. You could ask them that question right now. They have been prepped. If Plan A doesn't work, which was my Plan A, then Plan B is to come up with some additional cuts. So they hopefully are prepared to make those kinds of recommendations possibly as soon as tonight, or at least to begin the conversation. So my plea, again, is to use the rest of the meeting tonight to at least allow the general fund departments to make a presentation.
Brings me to my question I forgot to ask earlier. We do have a hard stop time tonight?
We do?
I'm asking, do we have a hard stop?
Not that I know of.
We typically in past years have done that to respect the time of everyone and the fact that we're talking numbers and get rummy when it gets late.
Yes, I know.
So we usually try to be done by like 8:30. I would say I would go no longer than 9. I mean,
Yeah,
a 3-hour
I would say
meeting
till
talking
about
about
9.
numbers is absolutely rough.
Mr. Barwick, you
I was
have,
gonna say, the other suggestion that I could make is, considering that only goes to general fund, we could skip ahead and talk about some of these other items in the remainder time and get that out of the way, because if general fund is all that's affected by that, we still have time to discuss items 3 through 14, right?
Yeah, I was just thinking, in order to get the conversation rolling about, what it is that the general fund departments do, that we could just get that conversation rolling. So
Is that the best use of time?
then we would use next week for the special enterprise funds and all the special.
Yeah, I guess I don't know, because we don't know what's going to happen with that council discussion, right? And so maybe the council will go a different way, and then is that discussion pointless, right?
Or we could just hammer out some funds and be done with them.
I have a dog in this fight, but I don't have a vote, but I will say, in regards to having department heads here, I think from where Eileen is coming from, that gives the department heads the opportunity to sell their budgets, and why, by taking, to her point, she has been prepping, for this Plan A, Plan B, Plan A being, great, we do the 15%, if not, then the department heads are teed up and ready to go. So I think that it's worth starting that conversation so we can get some dialogue going to be fruitful with our group conversation.
Councilor Maldonado, goodness sakes, one of these years I'm going to get that name right.
You almost have it right every time.
I know, it's just almost.
Almost. All right, yeah, it is getting late. I've been up since 5 going at it, and I can see both sides, I can see Sean's points on it. Is it a moot point, really? Can we just hash out some of the rest of it and That way we're moving forward and then address this whenever it's brought back to us. I get that aspect, but Plan A should have been brought up to us sooner because it's my understanding that the reserve should have been discussed before Plan A was even an option. Am I wrong here?
I feel like we should hammer out the budget funds that don't affect the general fund balance. What do the citizens members think?
Jack, you've been quiet.
You're still quiet.
Just a request, Mayor, is the agenda for next Wednesday's meeting set in stone yet?
Yeah. Wednesdays, it's about to be.
It's about to be.
Yeah, you can add things to it still.
No, I'm just saying is that I think this should go soon.
Counselor Patton?
Yeah, so I guess, to me, I have no problem hammering out some stuff that's not affected by this tonight. But I think as late as it is and as many questions as people are going to pose, I think trying to get the department directors down on the floor to explain pitch their budgets and tell us if or where they are prepared to make adjustments is a recipe for disaster. What I really think we need to do is, to me, if the department directors had a plan that if this didn't work and that they were going to need to pitch some adjustments to their budgets to the council to decide on, then those should be ready to go right now. Like there should be a list of them. We should be able to have reviewed that in advance, knowing that this was coming, okay? So that is why I'm proposing that, and to Councilor Waterman's point, I completely agree. We probably should put some guardrails on this. Maybe we say, what can you do to adjust your budget by 5%, 10%, or 15% as the various options. If they've already done that work, then great. If not, then they have something to go on. But I know this group. I've been doing these city budgets now for 15 years or more. I see where this is going, and it's just there's going to be a lot of wheel spinning. And I think there's some prep work that can be done that would give some guidance to folks to steer this conversation.
So what is the agreement? Do we want to?
I say we move on to the library.
Library or adjourn or?
When you move to the library, there's 300 and some thousand in there that is affected by the general fund. So that's not independent from the general fund.
That's true. We can move to transit.
But there is also a significant portion that is not, so.
We could skip to transit. I'm just trying to get through some of these funds before our time is up.
Are we
I
ready
need
to
to
do
do
that?
that. Oh, okay, transit.
Okay, let's go to transit. Page 81.
Transit, question on transit, it is also going to affect a bunch of other funds. Now, with the cuts that are going on at the federal level, transit's funding is highly dependent on federal grants. What's plan B if the federal government decides they don't want to fund this anymore or don't want to fund part of it?
Well, great question. The answer is that a smaller portion of our budget is funded by federal grants. And as with all transit everywhere, the answer is always operations. So anytime you lose funding, you cut service. There is no in-between model. I mean, most of our budget is operations. It's the buses on the road, and it's the cost we pay for the drivers, the fuel, and the tires, and everything else. So if the federal government decides well, we're not going to fund your 5311 or 5310 anymore, we will reduce service. We've got a few plans to do that we think should minimize the impact, but people are still going to feel it. Right now, this is my understanding from ODOT, but ODOT's got its own issues. So is that the federal government has agreed to fund the 5311 and the 5310 for fiscal year 26, but not yet at this point for fiscal year 27. Now, I can't guarantee that's going to come through, right? But, you can see most of our money comes actually from payroll tax. We get about $2 million from payroll tax, and we get close to $1 million from federal grants. So it's close to a third. So, but yeah, it'll have a massive impact, and it will definitely cause us to cut service. But we have a good idea of where that service would come from. Okay. We hope we don't have to get there. We're already working right now on a reduction to the city of Woodburn, just to hedge our bets a little bit. Right now, we run half-hour service during the peaks. We're looking at running hourly service during the peaks. Just, one, we don't have the ridership, honestly, to keep half-hour service. Two, the city of Salem, we went to them and asked for some of their STIF funds to fund that service, and they told us, no, thank you. And so we decided that, well, our money's best kept here more locally then. So if that, if that money didn't come to pass, that service would help fund some of that. Our dial-a-ride has decreased dramatically since we put in the loop. So we could probably get away. Obviously, there's some folks that would be impacted by that, but we could probably get away with some cuts there. And if that continued, then we'd start having to have harder conversations about the 99. I would probably go after the Woodburn end altogether, just because most of our ridership is on the Oregon City end. I hope we never get there. I'm just telling you that there are thoughts in my mind and plans if this money goes away. I'm more worried, to be honest, about the STIF. The STIF is tied directly to, unfortunately, TriMet and the Portland metro area's income. And if you follow the news at all, you've seen a lot of businesses pulling out or laying off. And so I think we're going to see a reduction in that. As it is right now, I don't have as much money coming in the next biennium for STIF for our loop and our Saturday service. So Saturday would be the first thing to go, and then we'd look at the loop afterwards. Again, these are just all hypotheticals in my mind. I have not actually laid out, we're definitely going to do this. Just when I know the money could be an issue, I start thinking about where we can make those adjustments, and those are the ideas I have. Hoping that doesn't happen. Our biggest cost increase constantly is the contractor, because of course their costs are all personnel related, and personnel costs are going through the roof everywhere you look. So we have gone up 18% about a year ago. This year it'll be 5%. I think it's 5% next year. So we'll be at $100 an hour by the end of this budget. So we're getting up there.
Yes. Thank you, Todd. I'm wondering, on the contractor, how often do we go out for bid, or are there multiple service providers that we could go out for bid and see if we can get that service
So the
less expensive?
federal government requires us to go out for bid periodically. The recommendation is every 5 to 7 years.
Okay.
I usually sign a 6-year contract. We are on year, this July will be year 5 of a 6-year contract.
Okay.
So this will carry us through this biennium, but the next biennium, we will have to go back out again for another contract.
Okay, that answers my
There
question.
right now appears to be only 3 service providers willing to bid on small organizations.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Councilor Waterman.
In the past, when you've done RFPs for contractors for services,
Yeah.
how often do you actually get a lower bid from the new one, from what it was the previous
It's
year?
pretty rare. So part of the problem is our personnel costs are higher than many of the folks around us. And that's simply because the union has negotiated some fairly slick benefits for our drivers. All our drivers get paid medical for themselves. And they have a retirement account as well as pretty generous pay. So that tends to drive our personnel costs a little higher. So for instance, Sandy's only paying about $90 an hour. We're paying about 93, and a lot of that's built into that. So the contractor is limited in what they can do based on personnel, and again, 90% of their cost is personnel. I think I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe their profit margin is only 3 to 5% on our contract currently. The other thing that's driving our costs up is insurance, which is driving everybody's costs up.
Yeah.
And we have to, because CIS dropped us, they will not insure our contractor. The contractor has to pay for their own insurance. And contract insurance is much higher than CIS is. So that drives my costs up even further. Yeah. Well, of course, anything that the contractor has to pay for, I actually pay for, so.
And what was the reason CIS dropped this?
They don't want to insure people who are not members of the cities driving city vehicles.
Makes sense, okay. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So Todd, in the detailed statement, and I know that it's, looking at the numbers, it's not a lot. So the transit payroll tax, I mean, it's not a lot.
6
but-
cents for every $1,000 of payroll. So
Right.
$6 for every 1,000.
And so discussion, I mean, is that even worth looking at by the budget committee or by the council to?
So the payroll tax is the purview of the council. If the council decided they wanted to increase the payroll tax, that would be on your desk to do so. It has not changed in the 22 years since transit was pulled out of TriMet. That was the payroll tax at the time that was set. It's in the original documents and it hasn't changed since then. So if we got to the point where we look at a budget, you would have to decide whether or not you wanted to continue certain levels of service and increase the funding for those services. The best way, honestly, is to bring more businesses to Canby. So it's the best way forever.
Paying jobs.
Yes, with paying jobs, yeah.
Higher paying jobs, because it's a percentage of payroll.
Yes, it is, yeah.
I have a question, and I don't know if that's in your. or
Yes,
did I-
Councilor Stern.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'd like to take out your. I don't know if it's in your purview or not, but payroll transit tax.
Yes.
What are the stats on collection compliance on that?
That would be our folks down here. But it looks, I mean, honestly, I know for a fact that our current tax individual who's been collecting tax is doing a fantastic job. She's going all the way back to 2020 for all non-compliant businesses to get them to pay out. Our penalties are not super high, but if you look at the penalty section, that kind of gives you an idea of the compliance a little bit. Like in fiscal year 2024, we had $30,000 worth of penalties and fees, but our actual collection was 1.98 million. So we have a pretty good compliance. I can't give you the exact numbers, they would have to give them to you, but I think most businesses do a good job, and those that don't, you probably don't even know. So, but my opinion is the finance department's doing a good job going after every penny they can get.
Because my experience on my own professional level is that for smaller business, transit tax is kind of optional. And that's.
It's not optional, just from a legal standpoint.
I know legal's not optional, but there's often not a, basically it's tied into a city, the city business license.
Sure,
As
also
business-
not optional.
As the city business license is not applied for, then chances are the transit tax.
Sure, and so that would fall
If
under.
you're
the
not a brick and mortar business that has a storefront, a lot of them don't even know or think there's a requirement.
There is always those who skirt the law, sure. But yeah, I don't know anything about the business license department or how they determine.
But one thing, just as a suggestion, is that you have a pretty good relationship with companies like Paychex, ADP, and other ones that do payroll, because my experience a lot of times is I have to tell clients, the ADP and Paychex will withhold for TriMet when it's in Canby, and basically, and they'll say, what's Canby? Transit tax, and so maybe a outreach to them might decrease TriMet's tax base and increase Canby's.
always
Because
positive.
it's.
We
a-
actually just had the opposite problem, but, you know, where it turns out that they were paying us and, you know, they weren't supposed to.
'Cause I have to tell them that Canby
So sometimes you
Transit
dig, you
is
turn
lower
over a rock.
than, is lower than
Turn over the
China.
wrong rock.
And so it benefits them as much as possible.
Sure.
To get it into Canby rather than
Agreed.
China.
I agree.
Any other questions? I think transit looks fine.
I mean, I'm here and I got fleet and IT, and both of those are external departments, if you guys were interested at all.
To skip around,
Not trying to get
Skippity-doo-dah?
myself through this, but I just.
number 12 and number
Yes, you are. You're alive. You know, just saying,
Well, since you're up there, right?
I'm
Since
here.
you're already.
I don't have to walk twice, that's too much work. Three.
page 94.
Fleet services.
Yeah, you'll notice that budget is fairly flat. The fleet department has done a fairly good job of trying to keep costs down. They're still completely bound to fuel prices, parts prices. I know in transit, we're trying to buy some Ford transit vehicles that are a little bit cheaper, but this department is completely 100%, they build by usage, right? So depending on the amount police department uses, transit uses, public works uses, that's where their budget comes from. And there's not a massive jump between the two. They're trying to maintain status quo and keep their budget fairly close, so as not to, you know, really hammer the other departments. Yeah.
Will the Canby Adult Center remain a quote-unquote client after?
Their bus.
Yeah.
I'm assuming if they want to. It's kind of,
Any other questions? Right, are we moving on to taxes?
So, tech services, what are we on, page 90?
96.
This one's always more difficult, right? I did my best to keep that budget as flat as possible. The reality is that I need far more money than is in here. I have 80 PCs that are end of life in October. I have enough money put in this budget to do 25 of those PCs. This money gets charged to every department that uses it. So any increase.
Including the general fund.
Including the general fund, including the library, every department that's struggling. So if I increase this budget to get what I actually need, every other department pays for it. So I did my best to keep it as flat as possible. The reality is it's not enough to really bring us in line with where we need to be, but it is enough to keep us ticking along. Questions?
Police department's IT, is that over and above this?
You mean there's a particular individual or the actual?
Individual.
That would be on Tro's budget. If you, this is not, he is not included in my budget.
Okay.
So my budget is 100% just our current contractor.
Counselor Stearns?
When we're talking about computers that are end of life,
Yeah.
what does that mean?
It doesn't mean they stop working, it just means that they don't get the software patches and stuff like that they need to get.
We're
We have
talking
a
about
fairly robust.
Windows 10, I mean, not, or just.
No, it's
or
more
just
the
software,
hardware
it's
itself is.
not so hot.
Yeah, so if it dies, it dies. But we have very robust security systems, so it's not a huge deal, but they do need to be brought up to spec, and they need to be brought into a realm where they're currently being supported. So there'll be no additional patches or anything. Office 365 will continue to upgrade because we pay that to license with the land. But the hardware itself has reached what we call end of life, which means that its warranty is expired. And there is a life cycle, Paul knows more about this than I do, and he's sitting down there, where you want to be keeping your hardware replaced to make sure that it still has the level of support it should. We have 80 PCs that have been informed by our contractor do not meet that spec. So they will still work. They will work just fine, but they need to be replaced. But that's a $90,000 lift. And I've got $30,000 in the budget, which will cover about 25 of those, because if I hit everybody with a $90,000, additional ask, that's a lot of money for each of us.
Well, the question on that is, of course, we have 80 computers that are end of life, like this year or.
Yeah, October.
So by October, right?
Yeah.
So how many more will be end of life the next
Well, the
October?
goal is to get onto a regular, I think it's about 5 years, give or take.
5 years.
Yeah. So the goal is to get on a regular schedule where I'm replacing, 1/5 of all the PCs every year. That is the goal. But we are
And this-
behind.
This does replace about 1/5 of it, Mike?
It's a little more than 1/5.
Okay, so
Yeah,
in perpetuity, if we replace 1/5 every year, eventually we should have everything.
It will never always be up to date until the day that we no longer increase any computing power and computers never get better. We will always be. We are looking at ways to try to reduce our PC usage. For instance, there's a number of people that have both a laptop and a desktop, and there's no reason for that. So we're going to start forcing people onto laptops with docking stations, which will reduce the number of PCs we have. So we're trying to pare that down. That, again, that takes time.
We want to make sure we're not borrowing from a future budget and creating
No,
a debt to a future budget that.
We're definitely behind. There's no question. I mean, right now, I'm working on replacing all the switches in PD because all the switches are aging and I need to get them all replaced. And I need to replace all the switches here and I need to replace all the switches in Public Works. They probably should have been replaced before, but, we've had a lot of turmoil. So, but again, that costs money. I mean, to replace the switches at PD, I'm looking at $50,000 just for those. And then they need a new Wi-Fi system. That's another $20,000. So that's what the capital budget is for, is those type of replacements. Again, I could use about $500,000 there, and that might get me closer to where I need to be. I'm trying to, again, minimize the impact on all the other departments.
Counselor Patton?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. Up until now, has there been any change out of PCs?
Yes, I've already replaced, I think we're up to 20 so far this year. In fact, we got the entire library done just a few months ago.
Just the staff.
Okay.
Just the staff ones. We don't do the link ones. We don't touch those.
Okay.
Those on
And along those lines, is there like a long-term plan of, so if you're doing a 5th each year, how long, like from the time the computer is replaced? So I guess if that's the case, and I'm sorry, it's like
No, sorry.
10:30 here in Chicago.
It's a 5-year life
The,
cycle.
5-year life cycle, okay. The only thing I could think is it would be knowing what sort of situation we're in, and that if we could take a hit this year and maybe the next couple of years and still do some, but reduce it, and then make a plan for in a few years to then start to tick that up once we've dug ourselves out of the hole. Because if we reduce this amount, which will hit every department's budget, the departments that are getting hit that are coming from the general fund would essentially see some wiggle room open up in their budget. So, I mean, feasibly, do you think, knowing that they need to be replaced, is there a way to hold them together with, bailing twine and spit for a couple of years while we work our way through this mess that we're in?
You're only talking about $30,000. That's not going to impact anybody's budget to any major. I mean, that's why I try to keep that as low as possible. I also have to have some money in there because I guarantee if I drop that too low, that's the number of PCs that will guaranteed break. And then I won't have the money to replace them. The only thing you could really go after is that capital outlay, that $100,000, but you'd be putting off some major equipment that runs the entire city and saying, let's see how long we can limp. I can't guarantee you how long they're going to limp. They may, our previous internal guys did a great job limping along some old equipment. I don't know how much longer. This is where my expertise, I rely on my contractor to tell me how much longer these are going to limp along. And we've already lost 2 switches in PD. So I know for sure that has to be done. I know that Public Works switches are not in good shape. I've been told that by Direct Link and our contractor. So it's possible we could limp them along. I can't guarantee that something catastrophic doesn't happen and I end up spending, $40,000, $50,000 that isn't budgeted because we were trying to ease the pain. And I totally get that notion. I'm just telling you that there is a risk of stripping these things out. You can do it, we maybe can make it, but there's a risk that you find yourself taking from somewhere else that you didn't actually have in order to fix a problem. If that makes sense.
No, it does, but I mean, the fact of the matter is every little bit's gonna help.
Understood.
Right? I mean, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, all right, Councilor
For
Wyman.
some of the equipment, I know switches and so forth, there are, there's certain levels of switches and networking equipment and so forth. That is, you have Lexuses and stuff like that, and then you have, a Honda Accord that will get you through, right? It's reliable and do its thing. And some of those I know in some networking equipment could be literally almost half the cost. So if there was areas where you could look at just maybe being a little, because there seems to be, in the county, there's a mandate apparently that like you only use Cisco switches. And for me, I don't see a need for a $10,000 switch just because it's a Cisco. Cisco actually makes other versions of their hardware that is not a enterprise, like I'm going to be in an airport managing a, tower type of thing. But you can, so there are areas where I think that we can save some money and still provide a reliable
I think
service.
Polar's doing a good job. They have recommended we reduce the PD switches to 5 because they can run stuff through one of the other switches, so you don't need the other 2 switches. And we're looking at about $34,000, not with the install, but just for the equipment wise for the 5. So that's not too bad, I thought, for decent switches, but you're right, we could always go to Walmart and pull off something off the shelf and see how far it'll take us.
I'm not suggesting Walmart, but there is an in-between.
I've got some good stuff at Walmart, so you can't knock. Always the Goodwill option too. Every once in a while, there's a switch there.
FAA does.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just what our public wants to hear.
Thrift store.
Goodwill switches.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
So security
Facebook
issues there
Marketplace.
all.
Anyway, again, my goal was to keep the budget flat. Obviously the software line item, which is one of the largest portions of that, obviously Polar is the largest, but the software, which is $90,000, that is hard to get around because that is the software we need just to do our jobs. And those prices are all going up by about 5% this year. But you're going to come in under, so we were able to keep it about 90 and should still be close to that or slightly under. Put a little extra in that budget just in case, because I'm always surprised when somebody sends me an email that says, oh, we're going to increase your cost by, this much. It's like, oh, thank you.
All right, any other questions on this one?
Good.
Okay. Guess that'll be
It's done.
okay.
Swim Center Fund?
Swim center.
Sounds great.
Okay, all right, back to page 83. I'm looking at it right.
I don't know. Look at your agenda.
Hello, my name's Eric. I'm from the Canby Swim Center, and basically our budget is pretty similar to this year, and next year will be similar. The main difference is that we put in our budget to improve the dressing rooms. We originally were going after a bigger renovation, but now it's more like a facelift. But a couple months ago, we put in $500,000 for that. And with all the changes in prices and things like that, and we don't know how much things are going to cost, we ended up putting in $750,000 for that out of our reserves. We're not taking the money from somewhere else. It's in our budget already. It's money that we've saved over the last 20 years to make improvements, and it still leaves us with a good amount of reserve for unexpected things.
When is your next levy? What year are you?
So
with your
this
levy?
levy goes through June of 2027, and so we'll need to go out in November of 2026.
Question, looking at FTEs declining and contract service going up, what's happening there?
Yes, so our part-time staff, guards and instructors have gone to a service versus being city staff.
When did that happen?
Last fall, in September.
Okay, I didn't remember that. All right, thank you.
Any other questions about this one? We okay with this one? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Street fund? Street fund.
Sorry, what do we do?
Street fund, page 85.
86, 85, 86.
Materials and services, let's see. Sorry, I was practicing for parks first, so give me just 1 second to get caught up. You guys are jumping around on me.
Sorry about that. Oh, Parks is in the general fund though, so.
Yes.
You got a reprieve on that one.
I guess we could start off with some of our capital outlay. For the equipment line item, we are trying to purchase a bucket truck. We had budgeted for it last year, but we were running into problems with lead times from vendors being 2 years out. So trying to work through, we were able to find a vendor that has vehicles on the lot that we could purchase through state purchasing contracts. But we just ran out of time to try to do it in this current budget cycle. So we're asking to roll that over into the next year and hopefully be able to have one by August-ish. It's to replace one of our older rigs that is obsolete now. We haven't been able to get parts for it. We've trekked all over the nation trying to find somebody that has a used part, even eBay, and couldn't find it. So that truck is no longer operational, and that would give us 2 bucket trucks to where if something happened or one was being serviced, if there was an emergency, we would still have something for that. The other thing that we are asking for is crack sealer to be able to go out and crack seal some of the streets to help with our street maintenance from the equipment line items. The street maintenance fee projects for this upcoming year, trying to let that fund build back up a little bit for doing a bigger project the following year. We get better pricing if we're in the $1 million range than in the $500,000, $600,000 range. The ID sidewalk overlay project is currently going, and that number there for the $1,492,000 is what is expected from the county for our portion for the next budget cycle. That project is currently on track. It should be completed in October.
Excellent.
The industrial park to 99E is Walnut Street extension. The first phase of that has
gone out to bid, and you guys, council approved the first reading last week for boring. So that first section should be started, I'm hoping by the 1st of July. And I'm hoping that we can get the last of the comments back from ODOT to move forward for going out to bid for the rest of the project. If we can get it done soon, we're hoping that we could have completion in this budget cycle.
What is the first part versus second part?
So the first portion is strictly just putting in the sewer underneath 99 and the tracks and tying into the Willow Creek. That's where the sewer will run. So we just kind of broke it up into a couple of different projects, and then we'll also have a separate project that goes out for the signal that's going to go in there, and then the rest of the remaining project is for the full road section of it. The 10th Avenue Locust to Pine is a project that's currently underway, and this is just kind of the remaining budget for that into next budget cycle. They're currently slightly behind schedule, but it's kind of expected. The worst of the project is down at 10th and Pine, and they should be getting into better ground with all the utilities that are going in on the upfront part of things. So it won't be too long and they'll be up by your house, I think, so can't wait.
Yes. Well, that's right, that's in your neck of the woods. Yeah, I tried to drive down there
It's
yesterday.
time for the baby to start teething. Really excited.
And then the fuel station, it was a council goal after the ice storm of having on-site fuel for Public Works to run for an extended period of time if there was another disaster. We're currently waiting on some of the materials and the last of the permits, but we are under contract and expect that to be a quick project once we get all the materials in. And then the last portion was, for capital, was asset management program to try to have a better way of tracking all of our current infrastructure, being able to put it on a management plan to where we can not just go off of somebody's memory of how long exactly has that particular item been in service. My memory is getting clogged up with many things right now, so, and same with a lot of the other people. So that would just be a good program for us to have a better work order program for tracking everything that it is that we do.
Hey, a couple of questions. First one, Pine Street realignment, what is that accomplishing?
The Pine Street realignment is, what we're proposing is to try to figure out how to move the intersection of 4th and Pine to try to get that road a little bit further away from the tracks to allow a little bit better stacking. I don't know if you've driven it too often where some people stop at stop signs, some people don't. Some people park in the area that says no parking, don't block the intersection.
People block the intersection?
Yeah, so it's just trying to realign that intersection into a different location to allow better traffic flow.
Okay, when are we going to get a protected left from Pine, off of Pine onto 99E?
That's a no question, I think.
Yes, Mayor Hudson.
So to answer that question, that is one of those that I've been working on for like 8 years now. So as soon as I hear something, I will let you know.
You'll be the first call.
I did talk with our regional, his name's Paul Scarlett. Is it Paul? Yeah. Yeah. When they were here for the 99E grand opening and all that, and told him that that's a priority. They are looking at doing, there's a statewide resignaling project. And from what he has told me, that intersection is on that list.
Good.
I don't know, and this is where it gets sticky. It's on the list. but
Yeah.
where on the list, I cannot nail it down. It's kind of like nailing Jello to the wall. So, yeah, it's on a list. That's all that I've been told.
In a drawer, in a file.
At least it's on, at least it's on a list, though.
Counselor Patton, did you have a question?
ahead.
Were you done?
I have a few more.
Okay, I'll
Go
come
let
back
him
to you.
go ahead.
All right, Counselor Patton.
No, go ahead and finish.
Oh,
It's fine,
okay.
I can wait until you're done.
Okay, gas tax revenue, is it really going down that bad, that fast?
Scott?
Gas tax revenue.
You went
So-
down 10K.
The primary thing you want to do in budget is you want to undercut your revenues and over, for your expenses. So looking at a forecast for the gas tax, it's more of an estimated guess or, an educated guess that we'd rather sit here and say we're not going to get 415. Not only that, I don't know how many people are going to start buying EVs. And so that's basically just the best educated guess on a forecast from the past 10+ years.
Okay.
And I'd rather not show that we're gonna get 450, 500,000 and then overshoot, come in under and then them not have the ability to
Yeah,
have that revenue. So it's just more of a safe guesstimate.
okay. And then the last question I have, the miscellaneous income, what is that and why does it jump around so much?
Well,
Hold on a minute.
yeah, I was gonna say, we can try to pull up that in our system and see, but miscellaneous income is just simply something that we don't count on coming in. Sometimes it's a surprise. Generally, if it's that big, I know as a previous auditor, I would have asked for it to be on some line item. If it was 350,000 like in '24, I would want it to be shown separately.
Yeah.
If it's very tiny amounts, then it's fine, just accumulate a bunch of things, but.
Yeah, but I noticed
Yeah, we had,
for 25 projected, we've got a big number there.
Yeah, when we budgeted 10K.
Yep, we had money from the state of Oregon for an old, I think it was the ice storm, but money that they had held and then released an additional 25% because we initially just got 75%. So we ended up getting that full amount, that was 16,000. And then URD alleyway project reimbursement to the city was reimbursed to the streets because they were initially funding that project. That was a big part of it. And then we got a refund for a dump truck hitch. It was like 7,700.
Cool.
Every little bit helps.
Generally not a primary.
The biggest lump of that was the street fund. Sorry.
The alleyway.
Alleyway, from the streets.
Okay,
Oh, my knees are.
okay, that's all I had.
All right, Counselor Patton.
Yes, thank you. So I want to ask a question about this asset management program. In a subsequent city council meeting, we had talked about some sort of programs that you could purchase to put in reminders of long-term plans. So it's like, we know that we need to update Plan X in 20 years. So you can put a trigger in this program to say in 15 years, tell us, hey, wake up, we need to do this thing. Is this a program that could be cross-used for things like that as well? Or is it just something that is tracking like the age of a thing?
It's a computer software, and computer softwares can be programmed to do anything. And I think it would depend on what level of subscription that we tried to go and procure. I'm guessing that you're kind of asking about like the turf field at Maple Park, that it needs to be replaced every 15 to 20. Is that kind of where?
Yeah, it would be like the turf field, the comprehensive plan, and the park comprehensive plan, and some of these larger plans that seem to slip through the cracks, and then 5 years after they're supposed to have been redone, we're like, oh crap, we need to do this thing. That sort of thing.
As far as I am aware, yes, you could get a module in some sort of a asset management plan to kind of forecast those things.
would it be possible, to do some digging into that to see if, A, the program that you have has that you are looking for, has that feature? If not, how much that bolt-on would be, and report back on that by the next meeting?
Yeah.
That'd be awesome, thank you.
Yeah, I can speak to that just a little bit. The programs we are looking at do provide that flexibility where it would show us from year to year how much to plan for, how much we would need to have in the bucket, so to speak, to get ready for the next purchase. It will track the condition of the field, so however we wanted to rate the field, we'd have to, decide what that would look like, but we would keep track of maybe the turf needs to be replaced sooner than later or later than sooner. But through the program, it would keep track of its condition based on the inputs from staff. And we would be able to project financially, are we going to need to replace it in the next 5 years? Or are we going to get a little more life out of it? Does that answer your question?
No, not really. No, I'm not so much interested. I mean, if there is a capability to eventually put something like the turf or park bathrooms or something like in there and get down to that granular detail, that is awesome. But I'm specifically saying, we have these plans like a comprehensive plan, our transportation system development plan, the Parks Master Plan. These sort of plans are supposed to be updated every 20 years, let's say. But we need a reminder that in 15 years, we need a reminder to say, hey, guess what? This is going to be up in 5 years, so you need to start working on this.
Yes.
Is there that capability?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
That's
Fantastic.
actually much simpler than where I went, so, yes,
Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Any other questions on this one? Sounds good. Okay.
Madam Chair, I propose we adjourn this evening. Counselor Patton is 11 PM, and we've got some folks that get up at 5 AM, and I don't know about you, but I'm getting a little runny about numbers.
Yes, I would
We would
agree.
be recessing.
So,
Recess.
recess, I'm sorry, yes, we need to recess this meeting to next week.
I would agree. Do we have a motion?
That's my motion.
Sorry.
Second?
No, I can't second, sorry.
I second.
Counselor Davis seconded. All right, it's been moved and seconded to recess this meeting.
Before you get too far away, I want to make sure that I understand